You know what, we're walking around this situation right here. There's an uneasy feeling.
Well,
I keep saying that, but we're walking all around it. We sitting here calling what's going on, but I guarantee you there's something, a myth is the word. I don't even know if that's a hell of a word or not, but I know it is.
Carter asked to be briefed by the Director of Central Intelligence on the issue of UFO. And in that meeting, CIA Director Bush asked the President-elect if the President-elect would leave him in as the Central Intelligence Agency Director. And that he would promise that he would never run for political office in his life if Carter would agree to keep him in as the Director of the CIA. Bush wanted to, at that time, become more or less like J. Edgar Hoover had become at the FBI, that he would remain, that it would be above politics, that he would remain in that position. President Carter reiterated his request for the UFO information, saying that he had his own person in mind to be the director of the Central Intelligence Agency, which happened to be Teddy Sorensen at the time. Bush at that time then refused to provide the information to him, saying that he did not have adequate clearances, he was not the president yet, and that he should ask his own Central Intelligence Agency director for that. But if he wanted to have the information ahead of time, that what he could do is he could contact the Science and Technology Committee of the House of Representatives, and that they had an ongoing relationship with the Science and Technology Division of the Congressional Research Service that could go about getting things declassified to show him. That is what generated the request from the Congressional Research Service to me as the General Counsel for the Jesuit headquarters in the United States, asking if I could gain access to the Vatican library to obtain the information that the Vatican has in its library, in its classified sections, to deliver to the President for his review. I did that. I contacted the Jesuit, who happens to be the head of the Vatican Library, requesting this information. And much to my surprise, I was denied information. I wrote a second letter to them saying, look, I guess you must not know who we are here. This is the Jesuit headquarters in the United States. We have 10 provinces here in the United States, more than any other country in the world. And we're requesting this information to share with the President. They still declined. So I had to report that to Marcia Smith, who was the head of the Science and Technology Division of the Library of Congress Congressional Research Service. And she asked if I would be willing to become counsel, special counsel, to this investigation that was being conducted by the Science and Technology Committee. I agreed to do this. And I told her that I would need to have access to certain kinds of information that I would like to have declassified or get to see it. And she said, what would you like to see? And I said, well, the first thing I'd like to see is the classified sections of Project Blue Book. Those sections that have been referred to by Mr. Dolan earlier and by Gordon as not really available. Much to our surprise, I was granted permission to see them. And they brought them to Washington, and they brought them over to the Jefferson Building, the extension to the Congressional Library, before it was even open. A brand new building that they built across the street. And so I was invited to come over there. I went over there. No one else was in the building. They had security people at the door. And I went over, and I was brought downstairs into a room where they had these shoe boxes with microfilm in them and documents, etc. And in my review of those documents, I came upon photographs of unquestioned UFOs. It wasn't any question about what they were. It wasn't a light in the sky. It wasn't a vague report about having seen something going very fast by. These were photographs, official United States Air Force photographs, some taken through gun sites, but another one of a crashed saucer on the ground. There was snow in the photographs. It showed the saucer had hit into a field and had plowed across the field and was stuck into a snowbank set up about a 45-degree angle. And they had told me that I wasn't allowed to take any notes when I went in there. The two security men at the door told me I was not allowed to take any notes. But I actually had a yellow pad under my arm when I went in, like this. And so when I went in and when I saw these photographs, what I did is I cranked down the focus on the machine so that I could get a close-up view of these symbols that were around the dome of the UFO. And what I did is I opened up the yellow pad, and I put the yellow pad in there, and I traced the actual symbols that were along the base of the saucer. And then I closed it up, and I said, I think I'd probably better leave now, because I have this. So what I did is I put all the stuff back into the boxes, and I put the little yellow pad under my arm, and I walked back out, and the two security guys said, I'd like my briefcase back. They handed me my briefcase, and I started to walk away. And one of them says, what's that under your arm? And I said, oh, this is a yellow pad. And he opened it up, and he leafed through all the pages, and there was nothing there. And so, because I put it on the inside of the cardboard. And so I took that back with me to Jesuit headquarters, and I brought it to Father Bill Davis, who was my superior at the Jesuit headquarters. And we then agreed to go. We gathered all 54 of the major religious denominations, their Washington, D.C. offices, and we brought them into a meeting, and we proposed to them from the Jesuit national headquarters that we establish as a priority having the churches try to ascertain what information we could get, and that we could get the backing of the churches and then go to the Vatican Library and see if we could start to address this.
Okay, so who I am is, my name is Danny Sheehan, and I'm a 1967 honors graduate of Harvard College in the study of American constitutional history and international foreign policy. And I'm a 1970 graduate of Harvard Law School. I was the co-founder of the Harvard Civil Rights Law Review. And I did 2 years of my master's study at Harvard Divinity School, and then rolled it on over into the PhD program in comparative social ethics, and went on to become chief counsel for the United States Jesuit headquarters in Washington, D.C. Of a general background, the reason that I'm here today is because when I was chief counsel for the United States Jesuit headquarters, when Jimmy Carter was elected back in November of 1976, President-elect Carter immediately called in to meet with him the CIA director at the time, who had been appointed by Gerald Ford after Richard Nixon resigned in August of 1974, and Ford came in as the president and appointed to be his new Central Intelligence Agency director, George H.W. Bush. And President-elect Carter called Bush in to meet with him after the election in December of 1976 and asked George Bush to turn over to President-elect Carter all of the information that he had about the UFOs and extraterrestrial intelligence. At that point, George Bush refused to do it, insisting that as a condition for him giving that information to President-elect Carter, that Carter would have to agree to appoint Bush to be his Central Intelligence Agency director, because George Bush wanted to become like J. Edgar Hoover and become of being able to remain on administration after administration after administration as the director of the Central Intelligence Agency. President-elect Carter declined that invitation, and so George H.W. Bush refused to give him the information. And so President Carter contacted the Congressional Committee on Science and Technology and asked them to contact the Congressional Research Service and have the Congressional Research Service undertake a classified study and review of all of the information that was available that they could get and to answer two specific questions. One is, what were the probabilities that extraterrestrial intelligence actually existed? And the second one was whether or not one or more of these UFO sightings might very well be a vehicle from an extraterrestrial civilization. And I was contacted by the director of that investigation, Marcia Smith, who was the head of the Science and Technology Division of the Congressional Research Service. And in my capacity as legal counsel for the Jesuit National Headquarters here in the United States, Marcia wanted to know whether I could contact the Vatican library and see if the Vatican library would give me access to the classified sections of the library to determine what information the Catholic Church had on the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence and this issue of UFOs. So it was in that context that, without going into great lengths about that, the bottom line is that I ended up being given access to the classified portions of Project Blue Book, and so that I came back from getting to see that information and went to my immediate superior at the Jesuit National Headquarters, Father William J. Davis, and asked him whether we could bring this to our board of directors, that were the assistant provincials for social ministry in the United States, and to be able to take some kind of an official position with regard to this. The board approved that, and because of that, I then brought this issue to the Washington Interreligious Staff Council, which is an organization of 54 of the major religious denominations in the United States, the Union of American Hebrew Congregations, and the Methodist, and the Baptist, and the Unitarians, etc. And I proposed to them that we establish a task force. This was in 1978, to investigate these questions from a religious perspective and theological perspective, and they declined to do that at the time. What I want to talk with you about here this morning is the fact that a very significant process is underway that you might not otherwise know about. You all know that Francis has now been made the new Pope, that Benedict, former Ratzinger, has been relieved of command, basically, and shuttled off to a little nunnery where he is to be kept in perpetuity. And Francis has now been chosen by the conclave to be the new pope, and he is the first Jesuit in history to have become the pope. And it's very, very important, because it's important to know that there has been in our lifetimes this absolutely dramatic change in the Jesuit order. The Jesuit order is the Society of Jesus, the biggest single order in the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church being the largest single denomination in Western civilization. So that all of those things that you've heard about the Vatican and its involvement with the fascists, and the assistance that they lent to the fascists to escape through the rat line and to come into Argentina and Brazil and all of that is true. And all of the bad things that you have been told about the Jesuits, and many of the additional things that you've imagined in the negative about the Jesuits, are all true. And so it was in that context that, as I mentioned, that I was contacted in 1977 and asked to participate in this study that was being done by the Congressional Research Service on the issue of extraterrestrial intelligence and the UFO phenomenon. And I was consequently asked to deliver a 3-hour closed-door seminar to the top 50 scientists in SETI. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence was being conducted at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena. The scientists were extremely interested in discussing the theological implications of what it was that they were doing, and what impact was this going to have. They were very concerned that if they found out about the existence, if they, through that peculiar process they were using, surveying for radio signals throughout the universe, that they were concerned that when they conveyed that information to one or another of the administrations that was in office at the time, that they might not tell people, that they might conceal this, and that they were concerned about that, and they wanted to know what the kind of theological arguments were that were going to be being made by the administration, that it was going to disrupt all the religions and it was going to completely alter all of our view of who we were in the universe, etc. And so I ended up being very interested and concerned about this issue, and they're engaging in it. So what has happened is a very important thing that has happened. This launch of the Kepler on March 7th of 2009 caused the Jesuit order in the Catholic Church, after all this time, that they convened a major gathering of scientists in Rome at Castel Gandolfo, which is where the Pontifical Observatory is. And they gathered them all together to begin discussing with the hierarchy of the Jesuit order that what the probabilities are as to when they're going to be able to confirm that life exists elsewhere in the universe. And they held that gathering in November of 2009, the same year that the Kepler went up. And so what they've done is they came out from that gathering and they held a press conference at the Vatican, and it was chaired by Dr. Jose Fuentes, who is the Jesuit, who is the director of the Pontifical Observatory, and they announced that actually they had one of the civilians announce it, this guy Ipsy, who is the director of the observatory in Flagstaff, Arizona, which is the sister observatory to the Pontifical Observatory. And he said that it is now clear that it is likely that we will know within the next few years that life exists elsewhere in the universe. And Father Fuentes followed this up with a statement saying, in light of this fact, that we are now standing at the very brink of confirming that life exists elsewhere in the universe, it is time for the people of our human family to begin having an important, profound discussion about the philosophical and theological implications of the discovery of extraterrestrial intelligence. He said, and what I'm suggesting is that in response to the public call that has been issued now by Father Fuentes and the Jesuit order, the largest order in the entire largest denomination in Western civilization, that it's time for us to begin talking among ourselves and discussing this fundamental issue in order to demonstrate that we in fact have grown up, that we are in fact mature, we in fact can accept this proposition, that we can integrate this proposition, that we can understand that there's a rational relationship and an intuitive and spiritual relationship that we can have with these beings. That the mission of our community is much larger than simply trying to convince people that the ETs are real. Because that's going to be being done anyhow. Because the fact of the matter is that they are now engaged in a process of trying to feather in this reality to us. And what we're going to be experiencing is, first, we're going to be experiencing the discovery of these 40 billion planets. And they're going to start saying, oh, on one of these planets, through our super spectroscopes, we've now not only discovered water and oxygen and nitrogen, but we've discovered miniature life forms. Okay, molecular life forms. And then they've discovered another planet where it's evolved even farther, where they actually have minor amphibians, and then mammals, and lo and behold, we've established contact with an extraterrestrial civilization that is kind of primitive, and it's going to be a slow process of feathering this consciousness in. That's what they're going to be doing. Okay, so that's going to happen anyhow. But what we need to do is we need to undertake this more profound and important substantive discussion about what the philosophical and theological implications of that are, so that we can be out ahead of the power curve on this. That they're not going to tell us what the philosophical and theological implications are. we're going to inform ourselves about that. That we are, in fact, taking back our power away from these sinful structures.
Well, I told you so.
Enjoy it, my friend. You got to look yourself in the mirror. You got to stand up and look in the mirror.
There you go. That's right. I never thought I'd see people throwing debris.